You don't need to change your office to change your life. Sometimes it's enough to change your mindset from I work for someone to I work on myself. A true entrepreneur lives not by a contract, but by a philosophy. So today I'll show you how to think like an owner, even if your badge says a different name. And in the end, I'll leave a few minutes of silence, because it's there in the silence that the decisions which change lives are born. When I first heard the phrase, think like an entrepreneur, I thought it only applied to those who owned a business, people with teams, taking risks, signing checks. But over the years, I realized entrepreneurship is not a profession. It's a worldview. It's a philosophy. It's a way of looking at life where you're not a passenger, but the driver. And even if your desk sits in a large corporate office, you can run your life with the same passion an entrepreneur runs their company. I've met hundreds of people in corporations, banks, and government institutions who never registered a business. Yet every morning they went to work as if stepping into their own arena. They put their heart into it, worked with initiative, brought ideas, took responsibility. And you know what? They grew faster than those who simply went to work. Because their real work didn't start at 9, it started within with the thought they chose every day. Once during a seminar, I said, don't work harder on your job than you do on yourself. People laughed then, thinking it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. It's the foundation of entrepreneurial thinking. When you develop yourself, you become more valuable to the world. And the world responds to that value with greater opportunities, greater rewards, greater horizons. Yet most people don't see this. They live believing success comes through the company, through the boss, through luck. But the truth is, companies don't pay everyone equally. They pay for value. And if you want to earn more, don't ask for more. Become more. Become someone impossible to overlook. When I was 25, I worked in an ordinary company. And like many, I complained about my salary. I told my mentor, that's all they pay me. He smiled and replied, no, Jim, that's all they pay you. That's when I first realized the problem wasn't the company, the market, or the system. The problem was me. And perhaps for the first time in my life, I stopped blaming others and started looking in the mirror, because that's where true entrepreneurship begins, in reflection. Entrepreneurial thinking is the ability to see yourself not as part of the system, but as someone who creates systems. Even within someone else's structure, you can think like an owner. You can treat your position as your own business. You can build a reputation like others build a brand. You can cultivate skills the way an investor nurtures assets. And one day, the world will look at you and see not just an employee, but a professional who thinks, speaks, and acts as though they own the future. You see, there are two types of people in the world: those who complete tasks and those who create opportunities. The first group takes instructions. The second generates ideas. The first fears mistakes. The second sees mistakes as clues. And the difference between them isn't education, status, or position. The difference is mindset. Entrepreneurial thinking isn't a series of actions, but it's a state of consciousness. It's when you ask yourself not what do I have to do today, but how can I do it better than yesterday? It's when you don't wait for leadership to tell you what to do, but instead propose and create. It's when you don't just work in the company, but work on it, even if it doesn't belong to you. And you know what's interesting? That mindset changes everything. When you think like an owner, you stop spending time and start investing it. You stop fearing change because you see it not as a threat, but as an opportunity. You stop waiting for approval because you realize the highest form of approval is self-respect. And that's when true freedom appears, not the kind a title gives you, but the kind that comes from knowing I am in control of myself. I often tell my audience, life will pay whatever price you're willing to ask. But there's a condition. You must become the person who deserves that price. And that's where the real work begins. The work on your mindset, your habits, your attitude. Because success isn't something you chased. It's something you attract by who you become. And if you learn to think like an entrepreneur, even in a big corporation, even in a regular office, success will find you wherever you are. So today I want you to listen not as an employee, but as someone who owns their life, because each of us has our own company. It's called Me Incorporated. You are its founder, CEO, marketer, and financial manager all at once. And if you don't run this company, someone else will do it for you. And when this video comes to an end, I'll ask you not to turn it off right away. I'll leave a few minutes of silence, not for effect, for space. Because sometimes the truth doesn't settle when it's spoken, but when it quiets down. And maybe in that silence, you'll feel for the first time that a true entrepreneur is not a profession. It's a state of soul. Once I worked in a company where every Monday began with the same meetings and the same faces. You know that look? When someone is sitting in their chair, but their thoughts have already gone to lunch, and I'd catch myself asking a simple question. If I come here just to get through the shift, then who's building my future while I'm here? No one. The future belongs to those who take the wheel. And here's what I discovered. Working for someone doesn't mean working blindly. You can have a boss and still be the master of your own road. Entrepreneurship isn't a sign on the door. It's a way of asking questions. Not what was I told to do, but what value did I add today? Not why don't they pay me more, but who have I become so they can't overlook me when rewards are given out? People often tell me, Jim, but in a corporation, everything's decided from the top. I smile and reply, the top defines the frame, but you paint the picture. The owner's mindset starts with 3 simple habits. The first, responsibility in the smallest things. If your desk is messy, your mind will be noisy. If you promise to send that email by noon, do it by noon, even if no one checks. Discipline is the currency of trust. And trust is the credit that opens doors without knocking. The second habit, initiative without permission. See a problem? Bring possible solutions. Ask for one slide? Deliver the thought behind it. The third, investing in yourself as your main asset. Books, skills, communication, word choice. I always said, work harder on yourself than on your title. Titles change, but you're with yourself forever. Let me tell you a story. Early in my career, I also waited for someone to notice me. But people don't notice those who sit quietly. They notice those whose inner light can be seen from afar. I started arriving a bit earlier not to impress anyone, but to spend 15 minutes writing in my notebook. How will I add value today? Whom will I teach? What process will I improve? Those notes became my small daily business plan, and something strange happened. When you invest in yourself and others every day, you stop being just another employee. You become a point of leverage, someone people turn to when things get tough. And leverage is always paid differently in opportunities. Now imagine yourself as a company called Me Incorporated. This company has products, your skills, it has marketing and your reputation, it has finance and your ability to multiply value, it has a board of directors in your circle, and it has a CEO, you. If Me Inc. keeps releasing the same average quality services every day, don't expect premium prices. Want higher revenue? Improve the product. Add a skill that solves someone else's pain. Develop a voice that explains the complex simply. Straighten your posture, because posture, too, is a language of success. And most importantly, protect your brand. Don't promise what you can't deliver. In a noisy world, honesty is the loudest sound. I know how easy it is in the corporate world to lull yourself with the words, that's just how it is. But life is generous to those who don't bargain with reality. They work with it. We all want more freedom, but freedom is a side effect of competence. The more competent you are, the stronger your negotiating position. The better you are at untying knots, the more doors open. And here it's not just about working hard, it's about growing wisely. There's work that exhausts and work that multiplies. The first has no strategy. The second has purpose. I always ask myself, does this activity move me closer to mastery or just fill up my calendar? At some point, you'll notice another thing. A true entrepreneur doesn't compete with colleagues. They compete with their former self. Yesterday's you is the only competitor worth beating every day. Be a millimeter more honest, a step braver, a word more precise. Small victories build great trajectories, and when the next wind of change comes, you won't fall, because your roots will have grown deeper, not just your branches higher. Some will ask, Jim, what if no one listens to my ideas? Smile, write them down, and keep doing your part with class. The market always comes for qualities, and sometimes late, but it comes. Your job isn't to burn out in resentment, but to burn bright in mastery. Remember, we don't control applause, we control preparation. And sometimes the best way to be heard tomorrow is to speak today in the language of results. I want you to remember one detail about our video. At the end, we'll leave a few minutes of silence. Not as a pause, but as a garden. What I'm saying now, these are seeds. But seeds don't grow from applause. They grow in silence. So when the words fade, don't rush to the next video. Sit with your thoughts. Ask yourself, what value can I add tomorrow? What habit will I change tonight to make me Inc. more valuable? Whom can I help so that they'll want to work with me again? Soon we'll go deeper into specific techniques, how to bring entrepreneurial vision into daily tasks, how to turn ideas into processes, how to build a reputation from the inside out. But for now, as you listen, try a little experiment. Imagine that your next month's paycheck will be directly proportional to the value you create for others this week. How will you spend today? What will your voice sound like in the meeting? What will you offer beyond the obvious? Entrepreneurial thinking is a constant question. What else? But not from greed, from generosity. What else can I give so this system wins? And one last thing for today. Don't confuse speed with progress. In the office, it's easy to run down hallways while standing still inside. Progress is when your inner compass aligns with your path, when your words move you toward action, and your actions toward mastery, when every day you become slightly more valuable as a person, in honesty, in skill, in reliability. That's when the market mirrors it back, because the world always rewards those who have already paid their price, in time, attention, and discipline. And if you feel that in your heart, the rest is just technique, and the technique will cover that next. And when we reach the end, allow yourself that silence I mentioned. Perhaps it's there that your decision will be born, the one that begins a new chapter of Me Inc. When I say think like an owner, some people imagine only big decisions, buying a company, opening a branch, leading a department. But the ownership mindset is born in the details and in the invisible work you do when no one's watching. I like to start with a simple question. What's in your control today? Your words, your preparation, your precision, your courtesy, your response time. That's your entrepreneurial field lab. If you don't manage what's in your hands, why should life trust you with more? Once I was invited to observe a team preparing a major presentation. There were many slides, but little meaning. I asked, who does this help make a decision? Silence. Then I offered a rule I've carried like a compass ever since. Every page, every word, every email must move the matter forward. If that's not happening, we're not working. We're decorating inactivity. Entrepreneurial thinking in the office is the courage to cut the unnecessary and name the essential. Not to please someone, but to serve those who've trusted us with their time. Time, by the way, is the owner's currency. The employee mindset says, I sold my hours, that's it. The ownership mindset says, I invested my hours. What did they bring? Look at your day like a portfolio of assets. Where are your high-yield minutes, the ones that build trust, ease others' work, speed up decisions? And where are your loss-making ones, all motion, no value? The real shift begins when you honestly repackage time. Less noise, more impact. And yes, sometimes that means saying no to the good so you can say yes to the necessary. Owners don't collect everything. They shape the core. People often ask me, where do I start if I'm surrounded by an inert culture? Start with your journal. Keep it like the blueprint of your future. In the morning, 3 lines. My key values today, who I will create value for, and 1 decision I'll help someone make faster. In the evening, bunny down, 3 answers. Where was I useful? Where was I wasteful? What will I improve tomorrow? It's a simple ritual, but it turns your day from coincidence into design. And design is what entrepreneurs do. They don't wait for the weather. They set their sails to the wind. Here's another thing rarely discussed in hallways: your inner brand. Your name is a promise. When people hear it, what do they feel? Relief or tension, quality or compromise, punctuality or excuses. An owner polishes that promise to a shine every morning. It's not pride. It's honesty with oneself. If my name is on this document, does it hold up to the light? If my voice is in this meeting, does it bring clarity? If I speak, does it make action easier? That's corporate entrepreneurship, setting aside what feeds the ego and keeping what feeds the mission. And what about risk? For an entrepreneur, it's always nearby, but smart risk isn't a leap into darkness. It's a step into the unknown with a lamp of proven skills. That's why I learned to build small experiments, not repaint the entire ship, but paint one side and see how it handles the storm. In your office, that means propose a pilot, show a prototype, gather microdata, tell an honest story about the result. When leadership sees not a dream but a hypothesis with early proof, the conversation becomes easier. And even if the pilot doesn't fly, you still grow. Because what separates owners isn't perfection, but learnability. I can't skip communication. Many think entrepreneurial thinking means being loud and confident. But a true owner doesn't sound loud, they sound clear. They don't complicate, they clarify. They don't pull the blanket, they build bridges. Try a simple formula that saved me in the toughest discussions. Context, essence, benefit, next step. Here's what we saw. Here's what it means. Here's why it helps us. Here's what I propose next. 4 sentences that save hours. In an office where every minute belongs to someone, clarity is the highest form of respect. Now let's talk about internal economics. Sometimes we want a big external raise, but fear a small internal one, raising our own standards. Big goals are pretty, big standards are demanding, yet they're what create the gravity of results. Set private benchmarks. I respond within an hour. I keep my promises down to the comma. I leave a meeting with either a decision or a deadline, not just the feeling that was productive. When a standard becomes a habit, the world adjusts the price to your new value. It's not magic, it's the mathematics of trust. And one more observation. On my calmest days, the most important work happened inside. I'd sit after meetings and ask, what did people in that room really need? Data, confidence, permission? Sometimes the best initiative is giving others what they lack to move forward. When you systematically remove barriers, people stop seeing you as an executor and start seeing you as where problems disappear. That's influence that needs no title. You might be thinking right now, it sounds inspiring, but tomorrow is just another Tuesday. True, and that's exactly why tomorrow is the best day to start. Tuesday isn't made for grand declarations, it's made for small turns. Ask for a harder task and deliver a simpler solution. See someone's mistake as a chance to help, not to criticize. Translate abstraction into next steps. Ask your manager, what invisible work do we carry daily and how can we lighten it? One real I made it easier is worth more than 10 I inspired. I promised a micro anchor. Here it is. Soon, at the end of this video, there will be silence. I want you to meet it prepared. While we talk, do one tiny thing. Choose one fragment of your day that you'll rebuild entrepreneurially tomorrow. One email you'll write with more clarity. One meeting where you'll ask a question that moves action. One habit you'll replace with a better one, not 5. 1. Owners think big but act skillfully, in small, precise moves. They're the ones who steer great ships back on course. And of course, remember yourself as a long-term asset. Guard your energy. Don't waste it on battles where winning changes nothing. Choose projects that multiply your talent, not burn it out. Surround yourself with those who tell you the truth and wish you well. That's your board of directors. If it's wise, me ink grows even in storms. If not, you'll spend energy fixing leaks instead of charting a new course. We'll continue and go even deeper into practice. But before that, allow yourself the luxury of a simple thought. You're no longer a part of the mechanism. You're a craftsman who sees the mechanism and knows how to add a piece that reduces friction. When the words fade at the end, sit upright, take a breath, and let the mirror of honesty show you the next step. There, in a few minutes of silence, you'll hear your inner owner speak. And if you truly listen, an ordinary Tuesday will become the first day of a new course. because that's how real change happens, from the inside out, one clear action at a time. There's one thing that separates those who grow within the system from those who merely change business cards: the habit of turning every experience into capital. I call it inner accounting. Every evening I balance not money but lessons. Where did I add value? Where did I create clarity? Where did I distract? If you don't count your lessons, you lose them. Owners count everything that strengthens tomorrow. The employee mindset counts only what was handed out today. I remember the day I first realized the power of small responsibilities. I was given a tiny task: to prepare a short memo. I could have done it like everyone else, but I chose differently. I gathered context, asked two people most affected by the decision, added options and implications. 5 lines became worth more than 5 slides. A month later, I was the one they called when they needed someone to quickly bring clarity. Why? Because entrepreneurial thinking is the ability to turn chaos into direction. And that's visible from the very first sentence. Here's another secret I often share: ethics before intellect. Yes, competence matters, but people trust not the smartest. They trust the most reliable. I've lost in knowledge, but won in consistency, showing up on time, answering honestly, admitting mistakes before anyone else pointed them out. In a world full of almost, exact becomes a premium currency. An owner understands, my reputation is the warehouse inventory of future opportunities. If the warehouse is filled with honesty, demand never fades. Now about fear. In corporations, it often hides behind politeness. We're afraid to ask simple questions. Why are we doing this? The question that can save a quarter. The first time I asked it, I felt awkward. But awkwardness is only the signal that you're breaking through the old skin of habit. The owner is not rude, but neither is he silent. He protects the shared resource, time, and therefore seeks clarity. If you lack courage, borrow it from preparation. Bring facts, show consequences, propose a pilot. Preparation is the armor of courteous courage. To think like an entrepreneur, learn to distinguish the urgent from the important. The urgent shouts, the important whispers. The urgent is emails that demand attention. The important is habits that shape attention. I set myself a rule. The first hour of the day goes to the important. Review the goal, tackle one hard task, make one difficult call I've been avoiding. That's how I built days on foundation, not on randomness. And you know what happened? The urgent didn't disappear. But I grew stronger, and it stopped controlling me. There's a temptation to measure yourself by others' timelines. Don't. Everyone has their own season. Wheat doesn't scold the grape for ripening later. Your job isn't to copy someone else's harvest, but to honestly cultivate your own field. And that field is focus. The owner chooses a few directions and brings them to mastery, because a bit of everything is the diploma of mediocrity. Decide what you want to be remembered for in your domain. The one who clarifies, the one who finishes, the one who spots risks early. When your name becomes a synonym for quality, your career shifts from the space of asking to the space of offering. Let's talk about generosity. Yes, that word rarely appears in KPIS, but in the long game, generosity multiplies influence. Share knowledge freely, spotlight the quiet contributors, shield those carrying heavy loads from unnecessary noise. Generosity isn't charity, but it's a trust strategy. Teams naturally lift those who lifted them yesterday. Owners invest in social capital not to be liked, but because they understand that great challenges are solved together. Here's a small exercise before the silence waiting at the end. Imagine tomorrow you're a consultant for your own role. You walk in, look from the outside, and write a short audit. One thing to remove, one to standardize, one to scale. Remove what only looks like work. Standardize what repeats and drains your mental energy. Scale what creates the most value. 3 actions. And your day starts to resemble a system, not a series of heroic random efforts. And finally, about silence. We often seek one more tip, one more book, one more course. But sometimes the key isn't in new information, it's in new listening. When this video goes quiet, don't rush away. Sit with a few simple questions. What is within my control today? How does my reputation feel to others? What one initiative will I launch as a pilot this week? Write the answers on a single page. Let that be your small owner's contract with yourself. We're almost at the practical stage now. Ahead lie concrete tools, how to turn ideas into pilots, how to build clear emails and meetings that end with decisions, how to design your day around the important, not the noise. But for now, keep this truth in mind. You don't have to own a company to own the direction of your life. You only need to own yourself. And when the silence comes at the end, give it a chance. It often speaks louder than the loudest speech. There, in those few calm minutes, the courage for your next step begins to form. Small, but yours. Now let's pause for a moment. I want these next few minutes to be more than just a break. I want them to be a meeting, you with yourself. Because real change doesn't begin when you listen to someone else. It begins the first time you truly listen to yourself. In front of you are 5 simple questions. You don't need to stop the video. Just think as you go. Answer not with your head, but with your heart. Rate each from 1 to 10, where 1 means I'm far from this, and 10 means I live this every day. And don't fool yourself. This test isn't about grades, it's about honesty. First, how often do you behave at work as if it were your own company? Not in terms of duties, but in terms of care, decisions, responsibility. Do you leave things in order B as if you'll return tomorrow as the owner? Second, when a mistake happens, do you look for someone to blame or for the way forward? Because everyone who thinks like an owner understands, a mistake isn't a stain, it's a mirror showing whether you're ready to grow stronger. Third, how do you take care of your inner company? Me Incorporated. Do you invest in it? Time, education, stillness, discipline? Or just wait for someone else to raise its value for you? Remember, no one will ever invest in you more than you do. Fourth, are there people around you who make you better after every meeting? Or those who shrink you by a few centimeters each day? An entrepreneur consciously shapes their circle because they know the environment either inspires or drains. And if there's silence around you, that's okay, because it's in silence that true allies are born. Fifth, when the day ends, do you just shut down your computer, or do you pause and ask yourself, who did I become today? Not what did I do, but who did I become? Because success isn't a to-do list, it's the direction of inner growth. Now take a deep breath. Don't rush to judge yourself. Maybe you gave yourself a 4 somewhere, a 7 elsewhere. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you stopped and looked inward. And that alone is the beginning. If you want, write just 1 number in the comments, the one that resonated with you most today. That'll be your small promise mark. And if something in this video touched you, subscribe, not for the algorithms, but for yourself. Because each of these videos is a reminder. Success isn't something to chase. It's something to deserve through the state of your soul. And now, before the silence begins, allow yourself to just sit for a few minutes. No rush, no words. Silence isn't the end. It's part of the lesson. So stay, breathe deeper, let the words settle. Because maybe right now in these few calm minutes, you'll finally hear your own voice, the one that's been waiting all along to be heard. Listen to me carefully. The world doesn't change because of orders. It changes because of example, your example. And it doesn't matter whether a whole company carries your name or just your name hangs on a badge by the door. Because in the end, everything great begins the same way, with one person who decides to act differently. You can be the one who comes to work or the one who comes to life. You can wait for the system to notice you or create value so undeniable that it can't help but notice. You can complain about limitations or use them as training for your strength. Remember, the world doesn't pay for hours. It pays for the energy you put into them, not for attendance, but for presence with purpose. And if you fill your day with meaning, it will start returning dividends that can't be measured in money. Tomorrow morning will come again. Hundreds of people will walk into the same offices, turn on the same screens. But among them, there will be one person who sits a little differently, speaks a little more confidently, thinks a little deeper, And maybe, just maybe, that person will start to change everything around them. Let that person be you. And now, don't rush. Don't turn this off right away. Close your eyes. Let these words sink deeper than your mind, because it's there, in the silence, that action is born. When these lines end, let the music begin. Not for your ears, but for your heart. You've already taken the first step. Now simply allow yourself to be in this silence, because it's right there, my friend, that your new self is born.